Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Boozer with CUGC HQ. Welcome to today's user share webinar. We've got, I think we're going to have a pretty solid hour of content here today. So I'm just going to take a couple minutes to remind you that we have lots of local meetings still happening. Most of them are virtual, but I think we've got some happening in person. So make sure you check out the CUGC events calendar and see if you've got something going on in your area. Also, our very first Excel event of 2022 is coming up on March 10th. It is going to be virtual. I think the rest of the Excel events throughout the year will be in person, but this first one's going to be virtual, so you can join it from anywhere. So check that out as well. All right, I'm going to get us going here. We're going to be talking about a lot of great automation stuff, so I hope you're ready to listen and dive in. Ask questions along the way. Anytime that you have them, just type them in your question panel and we'll get to as many as we can today. We might not get to them throughout the presentation, but we'll definitely try to save time for them at the end, but ask them as you have them so you don't forget. Also, we are recording today's session and you'll get a link to that recording tomorrow. It's going to come to you from GoToWebinar. Be on the lookout for that. All right, I'm ready to get to it. So with us today, we have Owen Reynolds and Jonathan Pitre. They're both CTAs, and they're going to take turns presenting to you today. And I have heard that there are no slides. I think it's going to be really great. They're going to show you lots of stuff in their environment. So I'm going to let you guys have it. Owen, I am sending the presenter controls to you right now. All right, you should have them.
All right, 1 second. Okay, can you guys see my my screen? This one here?
Yep, the background with the drops on a leaf. Is that right one?
Yep. Okay. Hey everybody. So yeah, me and John, we work together. We're Canada's two of Canada's we're the only CTAs in Canada at the moment, and we're doing a practical presentation today on automation that we use in our daily jobs. Like this is not I'm using my lab to demo, and then John will be using lab-like resources, but we're actually using this stuff for real clients. So that's why we wanted to present to y'all, just to show you how we have standardized, automated, and reduced our build times for Windows-based deployments and application installs for Citrix-based workloads. This could be used for other stuff as well, even if you're a pure Microsoft shop or something like that. I don't have any like Linux stuff in my Packer build, but this stuff could be repurposed if you wanted to use it for other stuff. So all the code is on GitHub. We'll be dropping links. It's on my GitHub and John's GitHub. They're respective. We'll have links in there. If you attended the talk I did last year, this one is going to be mine is going to be auctioneer style. I just had a Red Bull, so I'm going to talk real quick because it's going to be 20 minutes for me, 20 minutes for John, and then some time for QA at the end. And the build, the detailed stuff is going to be on a blog, is referenced in a blog post I have from last year. What I did this year was to convert my templates to use EFI rather than BIOS, and to automate Windows Update installation. And because I live in Quebec, to also automate the installation of the French language, which I'm not going to show today because it takes too long. The French language installation, I'm just going to show you the base stuff, but I have a longer video which I'll probably post to YouTube that shows everything, but you're going to get the gist of everything. So for this lab, you can see my screen here. I already have Packer installed, and I have the folder structure set up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let it rip with, again, existing configuration, JSON, XML, and PowerShell scripts that have already been configured. And you can reference the blog post that I should post. It'll be on the CUGC probably later today or tomorrow, and on my personal blog in a couple days. And you can see every single line that you need to edit. When you're doing this work, you have to make a few changes for your environment. 90% of the JSON and the XML configuration that Packer needs, it should be the same. And then you've also got something new for this year is I created a wrapper that covers the the initial start of Packer, creating the VM, and then I added some extra logic. So the basic process with Packer, if you can see here, we've started the installation of a Windows 22 enterprise instance. As you can see, it started. And normally Packer is when it runs, and then it powers off the VM, which as long as I'm not alt-tabbing too much, you should see the entire process from end to end. The thing is about Packer is it's meant to be, the VM is meant to be powered off or converted into a template or just left off, which I didn't want in my case. So I have a very, very basic Power CLI wrapper that turns the VM back on when you're done, so you can boot it up and hit it with all of the Windows updates. So if you're at my speech last year, I had the entire thing end to end. I think I bragged about it being like I could deliver it in 10 minutes. It takes longer now. It takes 22 minutes because it does automate the installation of Windows updates. So while this runs, I'm going to talk about how I did that. So this was the Packer stuff. Converting my work from last year to bias to EFI was fairly straightforward. There was just a few configuration changes. I'm using a JSON configuration for now. I'm aware that HCL is the successive format. I saw James Rankin's post on Slack about that, so I will be converting it. Didn't want to convert it before my speech, just in case something went wrong, but I'll be converting it, the Packer JSON file to HCL at some point. So now we're using EFI, and rather than Server 2019, we're going with 2022. So me and John are like, John will talk about this as well. We're kind of evergreen advocates, so we prefer to use what's newest. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the best, but we try to stick with what's the latest. So last year I did 2019, and now me and John and most of the rest of our company are pretty locked in on using Server 2022. Or if it was Windows 10, it would be 20H2, 2H1, or 21H1, either one. We're trying to be as current as possible. We don't do LTSC. If your company is stuck in an LTSC rut, you can still use this stuff. The only change would be you would be amending the, if you can see here, you would just be amending the ISO that you upload to your VMware data store. So today's demo, as you can see here, I've got two. Today's demo is based on VMware. I'm working to get this working with other builders, hypervisors. So we have like our customer base here in Quebec is, I don't know, what do you think, John? Probably split, I'd say 70% VMware, 30% Nutanix, something like that, probably.
Yeah, we have a mix. Most use VMware vSphere, and some use Nutanix. Some French customer use XenServer, Citrix hypervisor, should I say, and a lot are moving towards Azure and other cloud provider.
Yeah, so that means that this code will need to evolve to support, like it only working for VMware right now is fine, but it needs to be evolved to support the other builders, right? So as the build is running, you can see here, if you've never seen Packer running, the basic idea is the Packer executable is a standalone executable. It's got plugins for all the different hypervisors and builders that are out there, API calls and all that stuff. And once it's done, if you're doing a Windows-based installation, it uses Windows RM, which is the underlying communication technology of PowerShell, to communicate with the remote instance. So it's looking for an IP address to appear over DHCP. I did actually figure out a way for one customer to get this working with static, a bit of a pain. But if you're doing this, your prereqs would be, you gotta have DHCP. So if you don't have DHCP, I mean, I had one customer who didn't have it, and I added some extra code. I wouldn't suggest trying this without DHCP. So as the build goes on, I just want to talk, as I said, my time is limited. So you can see here, it's gone through the basic parts of the Windows installation, which is your EULA, picking your C drive size and all that sort of stuff. There's no clicking. With EFI, the default, oh yeah, I called the account Pacman. the default, the difference between biased Packer and EFI Packer is that you get a prompt to say press any key to continue. So within the configuration file for, I'll show you. So within the configuration file for Packer, the JSON configuration file, there is these guys right here. So these are, again, these will be converted to the native non-JSON format, but for the moment, I have to add this to virtually hit the enter key. Otherwise, the build would be stuck as of about, I've been talking for what, 7 minutes? So it would have been stuck waiting for you to click the press any key to continue. So that's the difference between EFI and bias. Okay, so what we have here is from this point onwards, there's kind of a hybrid of Packer and the traditional auto attend XML, which is something Microsoft has had for, I don't know how long, John, how long have they had that? What, 10 or more years, the auto attend XML? They've had it for most versions of Windows all the way back to like Windows XP, I think.
Yeah, it came with Sysprep, so it's been a while.
Yeah, long time. Yeah. So what's happening is if you look at the, I'm not going to scroll too far down in my configuration file to get my password. So the way it works is lines 18 to 24 denote PS1 and configuration files that get copied to a virtual A drive, floppy drive, that is created on the shell and runs on Packer just for the duration of the time that Packer is doing the build. So what you can do, you can do some interesting things. So when I first did this presentation last year on bias, I don't think I'm the smartest dude ever. I think I'm tenacious. I think I'm like above average intelligence, but I'm quite tenacious. I was very happy to get Packer working on the first go. And I did, the biggest problem I had was this guy. So that is where you have to do VMware Tools. This is I don't know why I didn't know this until last year. VMware Tools is a service. It's also a driver set. So a very, very common thing to happen with Packer-based installations is that you install VMware Tools and the drivers go in, you get network communication, you get video, you get keyboard, mouse, all that stuff. You don't get the service. So I had to write a script, a custom install VM Tools script that would loop and make sure that the VMware Tools service is running. If you don't do that, this, you see this waiting for IP will never complete. So in order for the Packer.exe that's running on the computer you're doing the build from, to the vCenter instance, to the ECX host, VMware Tools needs to run. It's a bit frustrating. It took me a while to get it working. When I was done doing that, I was like kind of out of gas, and I didn't go back to look at all these other super cool things that you can do with the auto attend XML, right? So I went back this year and I was like, okay, what else can we do with the auto attend XML? Let's, and I'll open it up and I'll show you some. So from this point, if you can see the build screen here, you can see we're calling multiple scripts, and these are all hard-coded call lines from the auto attend XML. And you can put whatever you want in here. I mean, honestly, you could probably put in hundreds or even thousands of registry keys. In my case, I tried to keep it like, reasonably simple, but I wanted to cover my language requirements. For living in Quebec, we have to maintain support for both languages. So I added some extra registry keys to support that. I recoded it to get away from, last year, I only had this working in the lab context. This year, I was like, okay, time to start using this for clients. So I added LTSC and enterprise version keys, as you can see here. So that means that the ISO that you upload, you don't have to upload evaluation versions anymore. You can go on to MSDN or wherever, upload a full version, and you could deploy it with a key. You could hard code a key. You can use a volume licensing key, which I've indicated there, to be activated later, all that stuff. But the playtime from last year is over. Like now it was time to actually use this for implementations, because John and me, we're a very small company. we're extremely dependent on automation. We can't do everything manually anymore, right? So if I look at, you can see here, this is where it gets really interesting with regards to using the auto-attend XML. I guess the auto-attend XML is considered legacy, but to me, I still think it's pretty cool. You can go back and add custom registry keys that you can reference within PowerShell scripts. You can do, yeah, I actually have, how many references do I have to PowerShell scripts? Yeah, so you can see here, number, yeah, 15, 60. So you can see all of these things here starting at the number 14. And again, you can go back and read my sample template XML on GitHub. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's what I've got for PowerShell scripts. This one, the start first steps, which is probably just about done processing here. Yeah, you can see we're on to the second phase, which is the VMware Tools. The very first script that runs will download more stuff from GitHub, from John's GitHub, my GitHub, and it covers a whole bunch of extra stuff. So when I was writing this last year, again, I was just so happy. You know, it was like if I had just learned to drive manual transmission and I didn't want to learn how to drive up the hills of San Francisco or something, like to not stall the car, right? So this year I was like, okay, now I know this stuff. Let's make it more useful and let's make it applicable to an actual enterprise situation. So here's the VMware Tools installation. Okay, I have 8 minutes left. So I'm going to, if you want to watch a fuller version of this, like the build is going to keep going as John takes over. What I'm going to talk about, to be mindful of time, is how I automated Windows Update. Okay, so for many years on my lab, and there's many people who are probably used to using this module. It's called PS Windows Updates. So I still to this day use it for all of my Windows updates. John does as well. It's very handy. I have it running in kind of a wrapper. It runs as a scheduled task in all my labs, and I have it running on a few clients. So it's a module you can install from a non-Microsoft employee from the Balkans.
I find it quicker too when I run
it. Michael Gadget. Yeah, so this guy here. Yeah, he's had this, like, yeah, we're coming up on 11. It's amazing stuff. Because we're pressed for time, I'm not going to go into the entire history of it, but basically over December, I did some regression testing. I was not able to get the PS Windows Update module to successfully apply my updates 100% of the time. So I wanted, like with this, as you can see, I haven't clicked on anything to make any of this stuff work, right? So everything is basically click-free, the Packer provisioning, the installation of the scripts, scheduled tasks, all that stuff. Unfortunately, with the PS Windows Update, I couldn't make it work 100% of the time. I could make it work 50, 75% of the time. I would go for dinner, come back, and find that it was still running. It was stuck on some update. So what I ended up doing, and if you have attended my other talks, you'll know that I'm not a fan. In North America, we use the term jank, and John knows what I'm talking about. Things that don't work all the time, or things that are old or legacy or weird or hard to understand. So in the case of getting Windows updates to work, I had to resort to a slightly, what I would say, legacy or like janky method for applying the Windows updates, which is this. So I had actually never heard of this tool before. It's called the USO client. It's basically a command line version of Windows Update from Microsoft. If you run it and you launch it with this particular command line option, like if I was to run it on my admin workstation right now, it's the equivalent of launching Windows Update. And if you have automatic updates configured, which is the default for Windows, it will automatically pull and download updates. So this was kind of my workaround. So as you can see here, that's what that was launched by the script via scheduled task. And as you can see, it gives a visual reminder to you of what it's doing. So the problem with PS Windows Update is two. Everything it does is by PowerShell. You can log stuff, and on my lab, I do log stuff to event logs and stuff like that. But if you are a system administrator or an engineer and you're doing an automated build, a lot of people do builds with like SCCM or I don't know, what else do people use? Autopilot or, there's lots of different tools to deploy stuff. You kind of want to have a reminder. You don't just want to be like sitting there, looking at event viewer. So, and especially with something that runs that's only 20 minutes, it's nice to have a reminder. So how did I do this? So this actually came from an idea that John gave me a while ago, which is to use a SCCM third party. Well, it's not really third party, but an extra component, which is a standalone executable, which is called ServiceUI.exe. So traditionally, when you're running scheduled tasks, like I would say 90% of the scheduled tasks that I have, this is my home lab. It shows all of the different things that I have configured on my lab to keep my lab up to date. And certainly for most of my clients, same thing. Launching PowerShell scripts, you say PowerShell and then you give it an argument, okay? And as you can see here, it's a very long string. It's a path to my Active Directory, et cetera, et cetera. However, little did I know until John mentioned it to me last month, is you can actually configure, you can use ServiceUI to launch PowerShell. So you can see here, lines 154 to 157. I have it wrapped with quotes. The command is too long to put onto one line. So I'm actually displaying additional messages to the user. So the reason I'm using ServiceUI is because normally if you run a scheduled task as system, you don't get any nice messages that will pop to tell you what's going on, right? So for instance, if I was to run this scheduled task, it is configured to run a system, and the auto attend XML is configured to log the machine in 10 times in a row. You can, for my lab, that's fine. In your production environment, you may not want to log in a local administrator count 10 times. You could, if your systems are fast enough, you could probably get away with like 5 or 6, something like that. I just did 10 to make it easier, but I want to be displaying messages to the person. So I want to be like crossing over the normal system context, and ServiceUI is the only way to do that. So you can see here in the background, there's a PowerShell window that's running, okay? This would not normally happen. You normally run a system, this message that is displayed to the user, Windows updates have finished processing. I got to make this bilingual, John, actually, I just realized. It's English only. Anyway, this message would go to the system. You'd never see it, right? Which is not good. Like if you're sitting there, like even if even 20 minutes, like if you're trying to automate something, you don't want to be sitting there wondering what it's doing. You want to have some type of a poll, some type of a reminder or an interval to tell you what's going on every 5-10 minutes. So that is where ServiceUI is handy, because it crosses over the system context threshold. And I think I got it. Yeah, John, you mentioned it. I looked through some blogs. I found some Microsoft employee talking about it for the purposes of SCCM deployment, which of course
it's available actually on the MDT install folder.
Uh-huh.
So it's on the ISO.
I'm not a fan of SCCM or MDT, but this ServiceUI executable, free. I have it posted on my GitHub. It downloads itself automatically.
And just to clarify, so what it does, it's able to send a command to the login session. So you can execute a script in the system context, and you can be logged in with a user that has non-admin rights, and it will be able to see what's happening with the scheduled task you're running from the system context. The first time I had to use this, I was running a script to update Workspace app, and the user were not admins, and I wanted to bypass UAC, so I use a scheduled task, but they couldn't see the installation of Workspace app completed, nor the SF deploy toolkit UI window. Yeah. So that was really handy for that.
Yeah, exactly. So just like in this case where we've delivered the familiar Windows update screen to show the progress, restart is ready, and then I deliver a custom VBS pop-up or like a W shell pop-up to say, you got 60 seconds or it's going to reboot. All of those things would be lost if you're just running it without ServiceUI. So like I've done presentations on the past, or me and John try to do work that is sustainable. We try to keep a jank level, an acceptable level, so that we don't deliver things to clients that are not sustainable. I don't like this one so much. I would have loved to just use the PS Windows Update module. I did provide feedback to the author, but you know, it works, and you can, anyone listening to this or watching this later can try it on their own environment. All of this stuff is done without a domain join, so you're technically just with the default Windows policy. So all of this stuff should work for you. I've had people on LinkedIn and Slack and whatnot have messaged me and have used it in their own environments. That was the bias build from last year. This one is like even better and more useful. So the Windows updates are going to carry on. I'm at the mercy of the normal Windows update process, so I'm not going to. There's not really much point in me like talking over the rest of it. You've seen the basics. The rest of the stuff is automated. So I've only got 4 minutes left. I'm just going to review one other thing. So one thing just to be aware of in your environment, if you are using Packer, okay, so it's mindful. I actually had this happen for me at a client. The default timeout for a Packer instance, I think, is about 35 to 40 minutes. So if it's stuck on this line here, and they do have this in the documentation, but the Packer stuff is like the world of Linux, Unix, so it's very unforgiving, and I don't even remember where they vary it. If it can't detect the IP address of the remote Packer, the Packer instance can't communicate with the VM shell you created, your VM is going to be destroyed. So it's going to be deleted. I actually had happened to me at a client a couple weeks ago. I wasn't paying attention. They had, I don't remember how old the hardware, it was very old hardware. I wasn't paying attention. I probably went to go make a sandwich or something like that. I came back and the VM was destroyed. Because it was waiting to connect to an IP address and it wasn't able to get there in the amount of time. So you can override the default timers within Packer, but just be aware, if the first few times you're doing this in your environment, watch these screens. In fact, I would say, like, for the purposes of the lab today, I'm showing them on one screen. I usually watch on both screens. So I watch I could watch here on the shell. The main thing is to watch your task view from your hypervisor, so Nutanix or VMware, and you watch your shell get created by Packer, you watch it get booted, you watch it get an IP address, you watch it get a name, and most importantly, if this never gets filled, if VMware Tools doesn't go to a running state, your VM is going to be destroyed. It's just like a harsh, like I said, there's been requests on the Packer GitHub to change the normal operation, but that's just the way it is. So the first, if you're ever doing this, you're practicing on your lab, pay attention. I have this in my troubleshooting section of my blog post from last year. It's very, very important. You can't get this Windows RM communication going, then your Packer build is screwed. So the build is going to carry on. We can come back to me later. I don't think it's really necessary. All of this code is on my GitHub. It'll be linked. And I also have a full video of the end-to-end process with French. So if you want to see the language pack installation, but at this point, I'm ready to hand it over to John Boy.
All right, thanks, Owen. Okay. I'll share my screen. Just give me a sec, guys. Okay, please let me know if you can see my screen or not.
Yep. Why aren't you wearing sunglasses though?
I was on vacation during that. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about deployment of Windows apps in an automated way for your VDI image. So they can be Citrix, they could be RDSH, they could be, any really vendor out there. The idea behind those scripts is I wanted to build something that is platform agnostic, easy to use. So even if you don't know PowerShell, you could just download them and run them, and they work on their own. Like the amount of prerequisite is very little. We're gonna go over this. And first thing, so let's start. The first thing you want to do is, I have here a test VM. It's a Windows 10 machine. I built it yesterday. All I did is the Windows update. There's no other magic done in the background. It's absolutely new. So the first thing you need to do is you need to download my script. So if you just Google my name with GitHub, you're gonna find my repo. I posted a link in the chat as well. I've also posted Owen's GitHub repo if you're wondering where to get his stuff. Once you get on my repo, well, I have many interesting things. So two things. I have a folder for apps, so any installation script will be there. And I have something else for scripts. So today we're going to focus on the app section. We could do another presentation on some of the script I have, but feel free to have a look. Some are quite useful in there. So I want to just they roughly all build the same way. They share commonalities across the different script. So today we'll focus on Microsoft Teams because I know everybody is using it nowadays, and it's not an easy install process. There's a lot of prerequisites. My customers are rarely installing it properly, so it's just easier for me to give them the script. Okay, so on GitHub, there's to download file of GitHub. That's a challenge, even for some customer that never did that. So I don't have like I don't have an EXE to download. So there's 3 ways that I know to download stuff. So you can clone the repo completely. That would work. You go here, you do download zip, but you gotta download everything. You could delete the folders you don't need, obviously, but if you just want to download the one, you could go into, let's say, the theme folder. You could grab the PS1, you go in raw mode, you copy it, you paste it. So that's the one that typically always works. Another trick that I found out a few months ago, I think Eric from Xenap blog posted this. So if you go in there, your address bar here, and after the GitHub keyword, you add 1S and you press enter, you get this Visual Studio Code web view, which is quite nice. And then you can right click on a script and hit download. That works, but I don't know why. If any of you know, please let me know in the chat. In certain occasion, it breaks the formatting. So the scripts are formatted properly on the GitHub repo, but in some instances, when I download them, the formatting changed and they're broken. Couldn't find why yet, but if you have that issue, just go in raw mode, copy it, and paste it. So we're going to do that. I'm doing Control-H so I can all copy. I'm going to go in my C drive here. Already created a folder for scripts. I have a Microsoft Teams folder. So when you download my script, it's best to have them in their own separate folder because they're going to download binaries and you're going to have the version number. So if you mix a bunch of PS1 into the same parent folder, it's going to be a mess. So it's best to follow a structure that is independent for each script. So I'm going to name it install PS1. Now, let me just show my extension so I can rename that properly. Okay, so the other thing I want to do is just to make it easier, I always use ISC. I don't install Visual Studio Code when I want to execute the script, but when I build it on my own admin machine, I use Visual Studio Code because of the code formatting and all the extra neat add-ins that I have to make it easier. But just for running it, ISC is perfectly fine. You want to run it as admin. You need admin rights to install most apps, so it's easier to do that. I'm going to open the script I just saved. And I'm going to paste what I have in my clipboard. All right, so let me just expand this. Okay, so I want to explain why the script is built this way. I won't go through every line, obviously, because you guys will be bored to death, but I just want to explain real quick what each function does and why it's built this way. So every time I download script from PowerShell over the internet, one time out of two, they don't work. And I quickly find out that one of the reasons they don't work is it depends on if you're running them with PowerShell, PowerShell.exe, or PowerShell or Visual Studio Code. So a lot of them will use variables such as PS script root or other means to find out what's the current default location of the script. What's the current path? And I had a bunch of issues with many scripts over the years because depending on which editor I was using, it was working with PowerShell, but it wasn't working with IEC. So I built my own function and I made sure it's working with all three mainline editors. So whatever you're using PowerShell, IEC, or Visual Studio Code, this function right here will detect the working directory. And based on that working directory, I'm putting it in a variable, and from there I'm able to, call it back when I have files that I need to read. So it's quite handy. Also here, well, I have the progress preference and the error action set to silently continue. I saw a lot of people setting the error action everywhere in every line. Don't do that. Just use the variable on top. Much easier, much cleaner. I got two requirements. So you must be an admin. If you launch a script without admin rights, it will tell you right away. It won't run. And you need the PowerShell 5.1, which is the one that comes with Windows 10. So it should work with anything Windows 10 or Server 2012 and above. I have this ND also variable here. This is if you're running something off a UNC path, we had errors, and the fix was to just change this variable. The other thing also, each script, I have a module list. So they mostly all use this custom PowerShell app deploy toolkit module that I created. So if you guys are familiar with PowerShell app deploy toolkit, it's not a module per se. It's more like a framework of PowerShell commands. It's used quite a bit by the CCM MDT community. And it's quite handy. It's free, it's awesome. I think it's been out for at least 5 years. And it adds a bunch of extra PowerShell command to make it easier to automate any type of Windows installation. I'm going to show the help file with this and what's possible. But the reason I wanted to use this is to simplify commands to run MSI, EXE, changing registry key, and that sort of stuff. So I also need the module evergreen. So evergreen is this module made by CTP Aaron Parker. Evergreen will serve two purposes in my script. It will help me find out what's the latest version of the app I'm trying to get, and what's the download link. Now, Aaron doesn't support every apps, right? So in some instances, I have to use another module called nevergreen, made by Dan Gout. It's also available on GitHub. And this module will cover some apps that Aaron doesn't support yet. And we could also use winget. That's another possibility. I didn't have the chance to build a script with winget, but that could work in a similar way. So I have this long function here to load the module. And some would say, oh, just type import module dash the name of your module. Well, I wanted the script to run as quickly as possible. I don't want to necessarily run the update module command every single time when there's no update available. PowerShell doesn't have that built-in intelligence. So I built my own function. And that function would make sure it will download the latest version of Nugget, because that's a requirement. It's gonna sorry about that, my headset went dead. Okay, so it's gonna fill all the prerequisites to make sure you can install a module without an issue. And that can be complicated to, for the customer to just type those commands. So I build a function just to do that. And it works quite well. And also in every script, I have this header that you see. So the first, 262 lines are roughly the same in all the script. The thing you need to worry about that could be different for your environment is the declaration section. This is the section where I'm going to select which architecture of the apps I want to install, 64-bit, 32 bits, which language I want to support. Where do I get my MST file, for instance? In this one, I have one on GitHub, so I'm just downloading it. You don't need to download the MST file or the INI file. It would grab it for you because I have some logic in there to do that. And I have some logic to detect the current install version. So those scripts are meant for VDI environment. They're also meant for existing environment. So if the client already has a golden image built, you don't have to start one from fresh. So I always take care of detecting if the application is already installed, what's the current version, and based on that, I determine if the updates needs to be installed. And I also take care of uninstalling the previous version at the beginning and stopping the process, the service that could create some issue installing an update on top of an existing app. Okay, so we'll run just the header of the script. I want to show you a bit what PSADT can do. So now what's going to happen is it's going to grab the PSADT module from the PowerShell gallery. So you need access to the internet. So I know a lot of you out there don't have necessarily access to the internet from your Citrix images. What I always tell a customer is, at least if you have a proxy in place or some sort of security appliance, at least whitelist the master image IP. Okay, you don't have to whitelist all your VDI machine range. That's a bit over the top, but at least do that. And if you guys want to whitelist URL by URL, you could do that as well, but that's a more tedious process. So the first time you run it, it's going to grab NuGet, it's going to grab PSADT. It does a bit of prerequisite installation, so it takes a bit more time. But the second time you run it, those prerequisites are already installed. The initial module function will detect that, and it will go much quicker. But also, yeah, make sure your execution policy is set up properly. If you have some sort of Windows GPO that set it to, sign script, the script is not signed. I think it's definitely a nice security plus, but I didn't have the chance to automate that just yet. So if you're executing from your local C drive, unrestricted will be fine. If you're running it from a UNC path, you need to set it to bypass. So just keep that in mind, that's important. And there's no bypass GPO. So if you have a GPO, you have to remove it, set it to bypass. That's gonna run for a bit. I just want to show you guys the PowerShell app deploy toolkit help and the variables it's gonna create within the environment. And I think some of you may realize that the added value of this instead of typing the native command to install apps. This is almost done.
I should say as well, in my end of the presentation, the fancy windows that I was throwing that showed the build process, those are all PSADT as well. So you can use like WShell pop-up or whatever, but the PSADT, at least in my opinion and John's opinion, the windows, progress windows that PSADT deploys are enterprise class, like they're best in class as far as I'm concerned, unless you wanted to use some third-party stuff, but this is free. Everything we're doing today is free. I don't know, did we mention that already, John? Yeah, like nothing we're doing today is paid. We're not using PDQ.
Yeah, we don't want to be locked in any vendor. I mean, I don't know what the customer, which type of environment he got. He could be running SCCM, Intune, Ansible. Like, I want something that is PowerShell based, so it's flexible, it's platform agnostic.
Yep.
I want to be, up and running quickly. It's easy for any customer just to tell them, go to my repo, download the script, look for the updates. If there's a new version, download it, grab it, and then we could, easily build a scheduled task that just download them automatically for them as well.
Yeah, and a lot of organizations are already using SCCM with PSADT integration. So if you have people expertise in your environment that are used to packaging with this this module, then you're already ahead. Me and John don't do SCCM stuff, but there's some good interoperability between the two products.
Okay.
One is free and one is not.
Now I'm just gonna close the script and relaunch it, because the first time it's installed, for some reason the ELB file is not available. So we'll just take a second. I'm gonna save this. All right, so let me just run that again.
We got.
So you see, it's much quicker on the second run. It's much quicker because all the prerequisites are already installed. So if I do show help console, okay. All right. It's not running. Great. That's the beauty of doing live demos. All right. I can probably share it on my local machine.
You just want to pull up the help?
Yeah, I'm gonna run it now. I don't know why. I tried it literally 2 minutes before the meeting started, and it was working fine. Okay, let's try that again. It doesn't recognize. No, it doesn't recognize the command. Let's try it one more time. Then I'll move on to something else.
Yeah, we should leave some time at the end for questions. I've been trying to answer questions, but we've only got 15 minutes left.
It's still loading, so typically when you see that, this is the header of PowerShell Deploy Toolkit, so it tells me that it did import properly. So let's see if we see the variables at least. All right, we see the variable. Okay, so one thing that is really, really cool about PSADT is they added a bunch of extra variables that are not native to Windows, and it helps you out, build your script, put the config file in a certain location. I won't go through all of them, but anything you see with env and no column is obviously it's coming from PSADT. So you can get, you can use the native one still, but you can use those variable on top. And they had a lot of extra ones, such if you wanted to detect the version of Windows, you wanted to detect if you're running from a Citrix session, you want to detect the domain name. So don't reinvent the wheel. Just use those variables. If it's not listed, the one you're looking for, then yeah, create some code for that. So that's one reason that I think people they didn't really realize that, but it's definitely one of the added value. Let's try this elb command. Still not working. All right. Well, okay. Well, what I want to show you is that you have a bunch of commands with PSADT that are quite awesome. For instance, you can use the send key command if you need to automate click.
Oh,
a lot of applications out there are not. They don't support silent switches.
Just type get PSADT help, John. That should do it. That'll give you what you need.
Yeah, try both. Both should work.
Okay.
This is an alias for the first
one. If you really want to see it, I can show my screen if you want.
Yeah, do you mind? Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
I'll troubleshoot that after. This is.
Yeah, sometimes it's like any module. It requires a reinstallation. So Stephanie, if you want to make me the presenter. Okay, you guys can see my screen, the PowerShell help.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So there's tons of stuff. Yeah.
Right. So if you need to run an MSI, the execute MSI command is the one you need. If you need to patch an MSP, you got it. I mean, you can use the native one still, but those one, what is nice about it is PowerShell Deploy Toolkit build their own login system around it. And those log files can be read with config manager, the config manager log tool. And so you don't need to build your own login system. It's already been done for you. Those commands are quite smart. For instance, the command to set the registry keys, if the parent folder doesn't exist, it's going to create that that path for you automatically. You don't need to set any force parameter. It's going to do it in the background. So they made it really, really easy for us to
this one's a killer. I think this is one of the first ones we used almost 3 years ago, right? Get file version, very, very useful.
Yeah. So
get pending reboot, that I actually use get pending reboot, like those prompts that you saw for detecting when Windows is ready to reboot after an update. Obviously, you don't want to reboot too soon. You don't want to wait too late. So I run a loop and I just keep running that function over and over again, and it'll tell me when Windows is ready to reboot. So very, very handy. What else
right. The send key one, super useful if you need to automate click for an old app that has no silent switches. Set INI value if you need to configure some INI file. Don't build your own function, just use those.
These are the ones I'm using to display progress of the build, the Packer build. So you got your progress and you got your prompts progress. Again, there's other ways to do this with PowerShell, but I like this one the best. So if you guys have another method that you find is good for showing progress, it's free. Keep in mind, we don't want to be paying.
Yeah. And with the module, you don't need to download it manually from the website and then build your own PS1 and repeat, like, because if you use it the way they intended to be used, you need to copy a bunch of files in all of your application folder. So with the module, you don't need to do that. It's installed system-wide. So you just import it and you're good to go.
Yep.
So now that's the reason why we decided to use this. It's a lot of time saver.
Yeah.
Okay.
This one's.
Can you share back the screen to me, Owen, if you don't mind?
I think Stephanie's got to hand it back, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So the next thing I want to go through is the logic. So I always start the script and I detect, okay, what's the version I'm trying to install? So currently, if I check the value of app install version, I don't have it installed. Teams is not installed, so there's nothing to see. But if I check the app version 1, where is it? You say it grabbed the version with the evergreen module. So in certain instances, nevergreen or evergreen, they don't support the app. So in those instances, I build my own code function to grab certain apps. I have a few examples. My GitHub, like Antidote, is a good one. It's a bit tricky. You have to use regex and do web scraping. But once you can dynamically find the latest version of a project and the latest URL, then your script that you set up in place will always work, as long as they don't change any convention on the website.
Your screen's not on. You got to share your screen. Your giant 49-inch screen. Or is it 39 inches or 49 inches? There you go. Okay, you're good to go.
Yeah. Are you just seeing the? Hold
on. It was the PS.
Okay. Awesome.
PS ice window. There you go. Yeah, you're good to go.
All right. So I'm just gonna run the script. So real quick, in the script logic, always uninstall the previous version. Always stop the process. Another really handy command with PSADT is the remove MSI application. I saw a lot of people, they type the GUID of every single version they have. Don't do that. Just use remove MSI application, put the application name, and it's gonna grab all the GUID in the registry automatically for you. So it makes your script much more robust. It's much more easier also to update. And since we're dealing with Teams here, I'm even able to clear out the previous installation of Teams user, because there's Team machine and Team user, on all the logged in profile of the machine. So I go through an intense cleaning process before I run the new MSI. I download the MST from my GitHub repo. That MST makes sure to add the registry key. So if you're, for instance, if you're trying to install Team Machine on a RDS-H machine, it won't work. You need like VMware or Citrix VD install. Otherwise, there's a registry key missing. So by using the MST, it does add that key for me, and it's going to work no matter what. I remove it from startup because Citrix has an article saying it cannot be run at startup. I clean up the shortcuts. I register that DLL that is required to get that Outlook button to do team meeting. It breaks often when you do an in-place upgrade of Teams for some reason. I even download a team JSON file from my repo, and I put it in the default user app data. So new user profile gets created. Already have, let's say GPU disabled because it's a parameter within the JSON. Now, if you already have that JSON file within the install folder, I will not overwrite it. I download only the one from my repo if you don't have one already. So if you customize it for your own environment, I'm not going to overwrite your preferences. I fix a bunch of registry key to associate Teams as the chat app. And at the end, yeah, I clean up my default profile, temporary file. So I'm just going to run it real quick, just show you it works at least. Now you see a bunch of warning because I'm trying to delete registry key file of all the user that is installed, but since nobody connected before, it just gives you a warning that the key doesn't exist. That's not an issue per se. So every client that I have update Teams this way every month. They just launch the script, it installed them for them, and they know it's going to work as expected in Citrix. So that's just one example, but I have script for OneDrive, Office, Edge, and the idea is always to make sure to remove processes that are not needed at startup, stop services that are not needed, remove scheduled tasks, add the antivirus exception if needed. So I try to automate as much as I possibly can, not to receive a phone call saying it doesn't work.
Exactly. So the idea of like the Packer build, I've got the base level stuff, and then I call John stuff when I'm done, and then that's pretty much it. We're not really fiddling around too much with, obviously in a client environment, you got line of business applications or legacy apps that may require manual installation, but if you can cover your Windows build, your Windows updates, your language stuff, and your base apps, of which John has like, I don't know how many, you have what, 40, 50 scripts, including
it's a work in process. I try to focus on the most important one first. Yeah. So we all know that FS Logix, Teams, OneDrive, Edge, and all those Microsoft apps are needed. So those ones are already done and they're pretty solid. But I'm adding more every week or so.
Exactly. So yeah, subscribe to our GitHub. We've got 2 minutes left. I think I've been answering the questions as quickly as I can. Does it add AV? Ryan Dunbar. So John, there's a question. Does it add the team AV redirect codec stuff? I mean, that's more on your client side. That's nothing really to do with.
That would be for AVD. So that's a great idea. I could definitely automate that. It's not done yet. I mostly worked with Citrix, so I didn't have the chance to work on that. But yeah, that's a good idea for the future to add. I would need some sort of code to detect if I'm running it from a Citrix environment or AVD. So if AVD is detected, I could definitely grab it and download it and install it.
This guy had asked about overwriting. He's got an older version of PS82. So you just do install module minus name PS82 allow clobber, I guess, right? That would be.
That's it. You don't need the allow clobber anymore, but it's
okay
to have it. But if you run the script, it's going to update PS82 for you. So you don't need to install it manually. The older version you have is probably, I don't know if you mean it as a module or as a, as a folder that you have PSCDT downloaded. I don't use it in that fashion. I only use my module that I built with their official code. So if they were to release an update, I would update the module, a week later.
Yep. Okay, I think we've kept up with the questions. We're at 2 p.m. Yeah, I think we were able to. There's other stuff we didn't answer, like John and me are pretty active on Twitter and Slack. and our GitHubs. So if there's other stuff, and as long as 100 people don't ask us to show them the same thing at the same time, we can take time to show you the Packer stuff or the PSADT or the stuff, because like I said, all this stuff is free, so you can use it today, and the code only improves as we get feedback from the community. So we try to be active, but the reason we want to do this presentation today is to have more people use it.
Right.
The more people use it, the more feedback that we get, the better it gets, right? Last question, Javier Gonzalez. Are you using any pipeline to execute Azure DevOps Jenkins? No, not at this time.
Not yet, but it's something I'm looking into to do in the future.
Yeah, and then the Slack domain, Phil Bossman, world of EUC Slack. Okay, I think that's, I think we've kept up with all the questions, unless there's some other people have raised their hands, or whatever, but I don't know what to do with raised hands. Here's my hand. Oh, wait, give me the screen back once more. I just want to show I wasn't lying about my build, if you could. Sorry, Stephanie. I know we're over time, but. Okay, so yeah, it's done. There you go. 23 minutes and 24 seconds.
Awesome.
So that's the end. And again, these are all this stuff is delivered with that ServiceUI and PSADT integration that I showed earlier. And I have the full video, which we didn't show the whole thing because it's boring to watch Windows updates run. Well, I'll put it on, I'll link it from the blog post on CUGC to YouTube or something like that, and you can see the whole thing run. You can watch all the processes. But I think it's probably more useful just to review my blog post, because it tells you how to edit the JSON or eventually the HCL configuration files and get it working for your environment. Because watching the video is one thing, but really we want you guys to use this stuff. Nothing to do with our day jobs. We're trying to get that.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming. We appreciate it, and we're looking forward for your feedback.
Yes, thank you very much. I did put my email in the chat too. If anybody has any questions, you can reach out to me directly as well. And as soon as I get Owen's blog, I will get it up on the site at mycgc.org. So you can always check there too. And I'll make sure I get a tweet out about it. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Owen, for coming to me with this great presentation. Glad you guys did, and hope to see maybe more of you again in 2022.
The two of us. It's good. It's good. Not just me on my own. I talk too much.
There's more detail.
Later
this year.
Maybe we need a master class.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. Yeah, maybe.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you at another CUGC event soon. Bye.
Great.
Cheers.
Thanks.